Well, welcome to a special edition of the Spurs Takeover. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and I'm going to be joined by the one, the only, Benjamin Bornstein of Project Spurs, my co-worker here, so to speak, and he's our resident prospect specialist as well for everything you need to know about NBA prospects, especially the NBA draft. Ben is our go-to guy here. Lots of knowledge when it comes to this subject. And as we just heard just a few moments ago, San Antonio Spurs have the 11th pick in the upcoming NBA draft. I heard a lot of chatter right now on Spurs Twitter from all the fans, and everybody's wanting to trade, so we can go ahead and get maybe a top 4, top 5 pick. Everybody had their heart set on Denny Avdija, but that is not going to be. I believe that he's going to wind up getting picked probably by the Atlanta Hawks at the 6th pick. Maybe he'll be gone by then. I did mention to you I did like Devin Vassell, but we'll see if he's available. He could be, at the 11th pick. But right now, per SB Nation, what I was looking at is they actually have the Spurs at the 11th pick. They have them picking Patrick Williams, who's a forward out of Florida State. What can you tell me about him?
As someone who very often hate watches Florida State as a Florida fan, I can tell you that Patrick Williams is a very good player, and that at pick 11 could be a really good value. He is long, he's 6'8", he's got a great wingspan, he's 225, he's already really strong. He's shown flashes of his shooting ability, and at Florida State, it's hard to get a feel for what guys can do a lot of times because Coach Leonard Hamilton, he runs a super deep bench. He runs legitimately 10 or 11 guys every single game. I mean, there's no one averaging more than 30, 31 minutes a game. And that's, again, remember, that's a college game, so it's 40 minutes a game. And, for a lot of scouts, it's hard to evaluate guys when you don't see them for long stretches in a game. You get them for 4 or 5 minute spurts here and there, 4 minutes in the first half, maybe another 4 or 5 near the end of the half, and another 4 to start the second half, or the 4 or 5 near the end of the second half. It's tough to evaluate that. So I think a little bit of a mystery, a little bit intriguing, and kind of why some people believe he might be a reach, but I do think the potential and the upside are there. He is also the youngest collegiate prospect in this draft, so that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, he's the youngest prospect in this, like you said, this year's draft. What makes him attractive, though, is that he's 6'8". He's a combo forward. He has defensive versatility, but his mid-range game, that shot, that's something that he needs to develop. So there's still hope, for him to be able to develop that, especially in the Spurs system. Spending plenty of time in the G League, developing other aspects of his game, playing with other players at a high level, before he makes that jump into the NBA. We saw what happened with Luka Samanic, much to the dismay of Spurs fans who expected much out of this young man who's coming from the EuroLeague over here, but he's still showing that he still needs signs of development. I mean, this was just his first year, so prospects need work, and they're always a work in progress. It usually takes them, I guess, the better amount of 2 seasons developing all aspects of their game before they really show you some promise, when it comes to the next level and getting called up to the NBA and playing heavy minutes. We saw, with the exception being Keldon Johnson this year, which he came from Kentucky, so that's a different product all around, Ben. He was already NBA ready. He had the skill set, the IQ, and the work ethic to be able to, get all these things done that he needed to make that leap to the next level. But beyond that, I mean, this year's draft class is kind of weak, and that's the thing that I believe.
Kind of. Okay.
They don't understand, like, for example, like the Spurs fans, for example, they always want to make picks. They want these upper picks. They want to go 1 through 4, 1 through 5. But they don't seem to understand that if we wind up trading in everybody, and we make these types of lucrative moves at this point, it really is not beneficial to us, for one. to give up some of our younger talent that we've already worked hard in developing. So, with that said, would it be to the Spurs' benefit to move up in the draft? Meaning, they go ahead and make some trades so they can get maybe that 1 through 5 pick.
So normally my philosophy is don't trade up unless you can get it at the right price. Like you can move salary cap, or you can create salary cap space, and you can get a known commodity in return in whatever pick you're going to use. This year is a little different. There is no consensus top 5 players. There are no consensus top 5 players in this draft. It's just the top guy is really dependent on who gets the pick, and it's the Timberwolves. So it's really going to depend on what they're looking for. Now, if I have to guess, I imagine they will not take James Wiseman because they already have Karl Anthony Towns. They don't need another big man. I think if the Warriors don't trade down, they would take Wiseman. He fits in with the rest of that roster. But it's a tough draft to evaluate, and the worst part is this might be the year it'll be easiest to move up into a top 4 or 5 pick, because I think those teams are going to be so desperate to move their picks that they might take less in a trade just to get rid of their pick. They just don't want it. And so the Spurs should consider that if they can get top 5 or top 6 pick at the right price, I think they can guarantee themselves Obi Toppin in that case. And I think he would be the most ideal pick if they get up into that range.
Would he be a game changer for San Antonio? Because everybody's looking for the next Tim Duncan, David Robinson type of player, and would Obi Toppin be that one particular player that Spurs fans are putting all their hope in?
I think so. I think he was the best college player this season. And I think he would have proven that if he had the opportunity to in an NCAA tournament setting. So for me, he's a 6'9" forward. He can play 3 or 4. He's a good shooter. He can create his own offense. He can play a little bit in the post if you need him to, and he can guard 2 or 3 positions. I mean, to me, that is the most ideal player you can have for what this Spurs team needs. Gotcha. I think outside of another big man at some point, they're going to need another big down the line once LaMarcus Aldridge's contract runs up, and if Jakob Poeltl doesn't come back this year, they will obviously need another big man. And people were hoping Luka Samanic could be a 4 for them, moving LaMarcus to the 5, and he'd still take his threes and whatnot. But after what we saw from Samanic, he's not quite there. So there is still some development to be had there. But the Spurs are super deep at pretty much all of their guard positions. So, I mean, they really have to take a look at what forwards are available to them.
Yeah, they really would, but what Spurs fans really want is they want a game changer. They want that one person to come in and immediately have an impact on the game. That's exactly what they're looking for out of this year's draft. They're looking for that savior. But if we look and see what the Spurs have actually done thus far in the Orlando bubble, they actually played pretty well. They didn't look bad. They looked great at times. And, they lost some close games that they could have won, but that comes with inexperience. My thing is, I think we should just stand pat at where we're at, and see who's available, make the best possible selection that we can to fill a spot here with the team, and just keep on developing the players that we have now. There's no need to really do anything drastic, in my opinion, because we still have some contracts that are going to be coming off within the next season. Mainly you have Patty Mills that his contract's going to expire, LaMarcus Aldridge. You got to think about DeMar DeRozan this offseason. What are we going to wind up doing with Shemezi Metu? What are we going to do with Drew? What are we going to do with Jakob? There's some players that we can keep that are role players. Others that, yes, they could possibly be starting, but we don't want to necessarily overpay. So my thing is, if we just stand pat where we're at and make the best possible selection, we'll just see if the team can get better. I just don't feel like we need to do any drastic changes at this point. But
The all,
I was gonna go ahead.
oh, so I was going to say the only time you make drastic moves is if you can basically offload all of the big contracts and you can get something somewhat massive in return.
Yeah,
You get, you probably don't want to trade with the Warriors because they're not going to have good picks in the next few years. I mean, I would go so far as to maybe even trade with the Timberwolves because frankly, they're not a well-run organization right now, and you have to think that they're going to be back in the lottery soon. So you could go ahead and try and trade for future picks with them, and be they could have certain protections, but eventually they're going to convey you. And so you just have to make sure that they convey to you before they become like, kind of garbage second round picks. So I think if the Spurs choose the right target and they say the other team that they're going to trade with is going to allow them to unload a LaMarcus Aldridge, a DeMar DeRozan. I mean, if you take on both of those contracts, then I don't even care what pick it is. You just take it, you run, because those are the two contracts you want coming off for the free agency class in 2021. But if you get them off the books a year early, you can go out, potentially sign it, rent a guy for a year, and see what happens.
yeah, I like that. I like that idea. But I was also gonna ask you, uh, what other picks would you make? With that 11th selection, if they become available, what what draft picks right now? What players scream at you that what they could possibly develop into a stereotypical Spurs player?
So I do think that Patrick Williams is an option. Devin Vassell, if he falls there, which the new SB Nation mock draft I'm seeing has him going number 8 to
Yeah,
the Knicks, which is nuts, but also that would be a very Knicks thing to do. So it wouldn't surprise me. Um, I think in Isaac Okoro, it would be great. He's 6'6", super strong, super athletic. He's going to be able to play defense on 2 to 3 different positions for you. And yeah, he's got to learn how to shoot, but when you have one of the greatest shot doctors in the world, that is generally not an issue for you. So he can be taught how to shoot. He does everything else pretty well. Um, Another guy that I really liked that some are not as high on, Aaron Nesmith. I mean, he is already a professional shooter. He's 6'6", shooting over 40% from three at Vanderbilt. He had his season ended early because of a foot issue. So you have to do your background, make sure that all of that medical stuff checks out. And if that checks out, then you should be good to go. Because that guy, he was for the last 2 years, he was the focus of the offense on Vanderbilt, and so everybody was focusing their defense on him, and he still got buckets. So that's a guy you go to the NBA, he doesn't have that same role. He's a guy that people aren't doubling. They're not specifically spying him for an entire game. He could get hot one game, or he can get hot for a stretch of games, and things could happen. But I happen to like him a lot, and being an SEC guy, I've watched him a few times. Sadiq Bey, I really like as well. He's a forward from Villanova, so he's a smart player. Everybody who comes out of Coach Wright's system ends up being a really smart player, and they end up doing pretty well, at least the last few years. I like him. He can shoot a little bit. Another versatile defender, which I can appreciate, and I'm sure you can appreciate, and I'm sure Spurs fans can appreciate. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And there's another guy who is really all over the board. Some people have him going late first round. Some people have him going early second, mid second. So I don't really have a feel for him. But if he was available in the second round, I would say a guy like Paul Reed out of DePaul. I happen to like his game a lot. He's 6'9", he's long, shoots it well. He is a little older, but still a guy who can contribute probably right away for you. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking at. And again, Paul Reed, not a lottery pick, but if he falls to the second round, that would be phenomenal.
yeah. So here we come back to this issue again. In your opinion, one of the things that we need sorely here is a 3-and-D player. We need a wing. We're missing a
Yes,
wing
yes.
to guard the perimeter. If we get that 11th pick, in your opinion, what wing defender that's currently in this draft would kind of, fit the bill for exactly what the Spurs are lacking at this juncture.
Ooh, on the spot. For me, I think the defender that you are looking for the Spurs, length, he's strong. I think it has to be Patrick Williams, especially at the 11th pick. If it was 3 picks higher, I don't think I'd feel comfortable with it. But at 11, I feel pretty good about it. And granted, this is, like we've said, this is a weak draft class, a very weak draft class. And maybe they turn around and prove us wrong in a few years, but we'll see about that. I mean, 2013 was pretty bad with the exception of one Giannis Antetokounmpo, but even he wasn't a top 10 pick either. So you don't really know what you're going to get out of this draft. I think it's kind of a crapshoot, to be honest with you. So, buckle up, Spurs fans, because it's going to be a ride.
It's going to be a ride, but I don't know. We get our hearts set on a certain player, which Spurs fans have done. Now we're looking at the 11th we're the 11th pick, and we're looking at a projected pick is going to be Patrick Williams, like as you just stated, out of Florida State. So I'm afraid to get excited about this young man because one of two things can happen. Either the Spurs have him at that 11th pick and they pass on him in favor of another shooting guard, or or he goes even sooner. Maybe somebody else makes that selection, maybe at the 7th or the 8th pick. Which means that one of the other players might be available, such as Devin Vassell. That could happen. I even liked at one point. I thought, I don't know. He seemed interesting to me. It was Tyrese Halliburton. Another point guard at Iowa State. I'm like, we already got enough guards. We don't need any more. We're already a guard-heavy team. So even though I found him interesting, I'm like, well, we need to fill a role. We sorely need that 3-and-D player. And, I kind of have to agree with the projections right now. If he is available, I believe that the Spurs should pull that trigger on Patrick Williams. He fits the need that we need right now, sorely. And he could develop into, I think, potentially a really good role player. Now, is he going to ever be a bona fide NBA superstar? We just don't know. It's way too early to even speculate because we don't even know if the Spurs will, in fact, make that selection at the 11th pick. So there's a lot of variables out there. A lot of things can change between at the time the draft starts all the way up until the time that the Spurs make their selection. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe we get lucky and we get another diamond in the rough and somebody falls to number 11 like Keldon Johnson, did last year in the draft. He was the steal of the draft, in my opinion. He's a really solid player.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
he was absolutely. I'd have to go back and look, but I'd like to claim that I called it the steal of the draft on draft night. So I have to go back and look, but I would love to be able to be that guy who said, yeah, I said he was going to be pretty good. I said he was going to be the steal of the draft at 29. Yeah, that was me.
I think you did say that. I'll back you up. You did say that.
I appreciate that.
Something like that. So we'll give you credit for that. But still, I mean, he was available. The Spurs picked him, and look at what happened. He's looked every much the not bona fide star, but he looks like a star in the making, like somebody who's going to actually come in here and contribute. We saw him in year 1, and he made a big splash. I'm excited to see what he's going to wind up doing in year 2. So absolutely. It's kind of like the Spurs, and I think it was Kenny the Jet Smith who brought it up. He said when the hiatus hit, that was like the end of the regular season. Then when the NBA hit restart and they started playing again in the bubble, it was like the second season for some of these younger players, and we got to see a lot of them start, flourishing and coming into their own because they had like 3 months in between to work on certain aspects of their game and conditioning and working on their bodies. And then when they hit the NBA hit that restart button, some of these players kind of surprised us a little bit. And even some of the veterans that we have, such as Rudy Gay, they look, to come and find their second win. So
Rudy Gay looked refreshed. That he did to watch.
The rest did him a lot of good. Let's put it like that. But I'm excited about the draft. I'm looking forward to it. Like we said, it's just all speculation at this point. We don't really know what's going to happen. anything can happen, anything can change. Spurs could surprise us and trade up, So I doubt if that happens. They're usually it's the same old, Ben. Nothing sexy happens there, but it's exciting
I think
nonetheless.
the last time the Spurs traded up, that must have been 2011 to get Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, and that was with the Pacers. He was originally an Indiana Pacer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still love George Hill though. Love that guy.
Yeah, he's a
Mad
great
respect.
player. He still lives here in San Antonio. He has a home here. He still calls San Antonio home in the off season. So, the city still loves some George Hill.
That's my guy.
Yeah. So, Ben, before we go ahead and end this special edition episode of the Spurs Takeover, where can the people follow you on social media? And also, where can they see all the great articles that you have coming out of the pipe here?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at @the_Boomstein. Hit me with all of your draft hot takes. Hit me with all of your questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. You can find my work on projectspurs.com. I've recently been doing a series where I redraft the Spurs, and I just hit the second half of the 90s. So if you want to see who I took instead of Tim Duncan, feel free to head on over there. And if you want to see who I took instead of Manu Ginobili as well, you can do that too. And it's not because I wanted to, but I was redrafting everybody. So it had to be done. We have to keep it fair.
And there you go. That sounds interesting. I'm going to have to check that out myself. So make sure you go and check out Ben's fresh new article over at projectspurs.com. So we're in partnership here with Project Spurs at the Spurs Takeover. So make sure you also go follow our good friends at Project Spurs on Twitter for your latest San Antonio Spurs updates. So for Benjamin Bornstein, I'm Joe Garcia, and thank you guys for watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind, we're out, peace.